Welcome to Life Stories, where we share real-life experiences that inspire, challenge, and move us. Today, we bring you a story of an officer who followed his instincts, uncovering a potential child abduction at a local mall. What started as a routine day turned into a life-changing moment for a young girl in danger. In this story, you'll witness courage, empathy, and the profound impact of listening to your heart when it matters most. Stay tuned to find out how one man's quick thinking changed a child's life forever. Don't forget to subscribe to start today's story with Life Stories. It was a quiet morning at Summit Mall. The usual hum of the busy place hadn't started yet, as the early shoppers were still trickling in and most of the employees hadn't arrived. I was starting my shift, adjusting my uniform, and preparing for the day ahead. There was something routine about these early mornings. As I checked my radio, adjusted my badge, and made sure everything was in order. The air was cool, the floors gleaming under the soft light that made the mall feel almost empty and peaceful. As I walked down the polished hallways of the mall, I noticed the little things that would typically escape notice in the hustle and bustle of the day. A few store employees were arriving, unlocking gates, setting up displays, and chatting quietly. The faint sound of music started to drift through the mall's speakers. A cheerful playlist designed to ease the tension for the shoppers and lift the mood. But despite the tranquility, something felt different that morning, something about the silence before the storm of activity. I walked past the staff rooms, but the restroom was closer. I was about to make my way to the employee restroom when I noticed a line of people waiting. It was going to be a while before I could get in. My shift was about to start, and I couldn't afford to be late. So, without much thought, I made my way towards the public restroom across the mall, a little farther from the staff room but usually quiet this early. As I opened the restroom door, I noticed two people inside. A black man, tall, dressed casually, and a little girl, blonde and around 6 or 7 years old, were standing by the sinks. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The man seemed like he was taking her to the restroom stall. But I didn't think much of it. It wasn't uncommon to see a parent taking care of their child in public spaces. Yet, there was something about the way the man froze when he saw me, just a subtle shift. A stiffening in his posture that caught my attention. It was almost imperceptible, but after years of patrolling and observing human behavior, I couldn't ignore it. Before I could assess the situation further, the man spoke to the girl. His voice calm, but there was a hint of urgency that I couldn't quite place. "Wait here, quick," he said. The girl smiled brightly at him as he entered the stall alone, leaving her standing near the sinks. The girl was unfazed, completely at ease in this setting. But as I moved toward the stall next to her, a nagging feeling began to settle in the pit of my stomach. She looked at me with a warm, innocent smile. "Hi," she chirped, her voice echoing slightly off the tile walls. "Hello there," I replied, offering her a smile, though I couldn't help but keep my attention focused on the man in the stall. My mind was starting to race. There was nothing overtly suspicious about their interaction. But something wasn't right. I couldn't explain it, but the way the man acted, the slight discomfort that I noticed in him when he realized I was watching, nagged at me. The girl, on the other hand, appeared so carefree, so at home in her surroundings. Yet the man's behavior seemed almost like he was trying to hide something. I washed my hands slowly, taking my time, giving the situation more thought. Why had he left the girl behind in a public restroom if she seemed perfectly fine on her own? Why had he acted so nervously when he noticed me? The flush of the stall broke my thoughts, and the man exited, looking more hurried than before. The girl, still smiling, didn't seem to notice the urgency in his movements. The man walked briskly to the sink, his gaze avoiding mine in the mirror. I continued washing my hands, making sure I didn't appear suspicious myself, though the tension in the air felt thick. Something about their dynamic, the girl's cheerful demeanor and the man's distant discomfort, had begun to feel wrong. As he led her out of the restroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just witnessed something more than just a father and daughter moment. The girl waved at me once more, smiling brightly. "See you later, officer," she called out, her voice so innocent and trusting. as if there was nothing strange about the whole situation. But I couldn't ignore the weight in my chest. As I watched them leave, my mind refused to let go of the image of that fleeting moment. The girl's cheerful waves, the man's sudden tension, his reaction to my presence, it all felt off. But how could I be sure? There were no clear signs. No overt red flags. Maybe I was overthinking it. After all, parents had their moments of anxiety. And kids sometimes acted out of character. But deep down, I knew that this was a feeling I couldn't ignore. It was as if the universe was sending me a warning. I finished my tasks quickly. But the encounter replayed in my mind as I made my way back to the security office. Even though the brief interaction seemed innocent, something told me that I had to pay attention to these small details. These fleeting moments. This wasn't the kind of thing I typically dealt with in my day-to-day work. But I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't as normal as it seemed. I wasn't sure where it would lead. But I had learned in my years on the job that sometimes you had to trust your gut. And something inside me told me that this was far from over. I tried to push the unsettling feeling aside as I headed towards the security office. But it lingered. The briefing was about to begin. And I needed to focus. I couldn't afford to dwell on something so trivial. Could I? I tried to reason with myself, telling myself that it was probably just an overreaction, after all. I'd seen countless parents with their kids in all kinds of situations. But something about that man's reaction had stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my mind. As I entered the office, I quickly greeted my colleagues and checked the time. It was almost time for the morning briefing. But as I walked toward my desk, I glanced at my watch again. 9:03 a.m. I was running late. I had been caught up in my thoughts after the restroom encounter. And it had thrown me off track. I knew Sergeant Michaels would give me the usual disapproving look. But I wasn't concerned about that right now. It was the girl and the man that were still on my mind. I sat down, trying to clear my head. But the image of the man and the little girl kept resurfacing. Their interaction seemed so innocent on the surface. But I couldn't ignore that feeling in my gut. I had seen enough of the world's darker corners to recognize when something wasn't right. And everything about that man's unease made me wonder what he was really up to. As the briefing began, my attention wandered. Sergeant Michaels was talking about a new report on a shoplifting ring targeting the electronics stores in the mall. But I wasn't really hearing her. My mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about that little girl, her bright eyes, and that unsettling smile as she waved goodbye. But it wasn't just that. It was the way the man had behaved, his sudden tension. The way he seemed too eager to get away from me. Something wasn't right, and it was hard to put into words. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on me. I had to do something. But I didn't have any hard evidence to justify an intervention. I knew it would be a risk. And if I acted too soon, I could be making a mistake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was one of those rare moments when instincts were telling me something important. The briefing ended, and I quickly stood up, hoping to slip out unnoticed. But before I could leave, Sergeant Michaels called me over. "Harris." "A word," she said. I felt my stomach tighten. And I approached her desk, bracing myself for whatever reprimand she had in store for me. She raised an eyebrow, studying me. "Everything all right?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. The concern was genuine, but I wasn't sure how to explain the knot in my chest. How could I tell her that I was questioning the behavior of a man and his child without sounding paranoid? "I'm fine," I replied quickly, not wanting to delve into it. "Just lost track of time in the restroom." Sergeant Michaels gave me a long look, clearly not convinced, but she didn't press the issue. "See that it doesn't happen again. You're one of our best, Harris. We don't want to see that change." Her words were a compliment. But I couldn't help feeling a bit guilty for not being entirely honest. I nodded, appreciating her faith in me. But my mind was still racing. Once I was out of the briefing room, I knew I had to take action. This wasn't something I could just brush off. I had to make sure that what I had seen wasn't just my imagination running wild. I decided to head to the surveillance room to check the CCTV footage. Maybe I could spot the man again. There was a chance that he and the girl hadn't left yet. And if I could track their movements, I might find something that would confirm my suspicions. I moved through the office quickly, making my way to the surveillance room. Inside, a few officers were already monitoring the screens. The room was dimly lit, and the steady buzz of conversations filled the air. As soon as I walked in, I explained the situation, describing the man and the girl. "We need to find them," I said, urgency creeping into my voice. Quickly, the officers nodded, and the search began. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as we watched the footage. Every second seemed to drag on, and my anxiety only increased. Would we be able to find them? Or was I chasing ghosts? Minutes passed, and then one of the officers called out, pointing at one of the monitors. "There, the man and the girl," he said, as they appeared on the screen, heading toward the central station entrance. My pulse quickened. This was it. I knew they were about to leave the mall. But there was something else I was missing. Something that felt so much bigger than just a routine patrol. I grabbed my radio and called for backup. "Possible child abduction in progress," I said, my voice steady, though my mind was racing. "All units, be on the lookout for a black male, approximately 6 feet tall, wearing a black jacket, accompanied by a young blonde girl, about 10 years old. Approach with caution." As the officers moved into position, I could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on me. It wasn't just about following procedure anymore. It was about doing the right thing. About protecting a child who might not even know she was in danger. The chase was on, and my instincts were guiding me every step of the way. The hallway outside the surveillance room felt strangely quiet after the rush of adrenaline that had overtaken me. My mind was focused, and my heartbeat had quickened in response to the urgency of the situation. The CCTV footage had shown the man and the girl heading toward the central station. There wasn't much time left. I grabbed my radio again, relaying the details to my colleagues as I moved swiftly through the corridors. Heading toward the elevators. "We've got a possible child abduction in progress," I repeated over the radio, though my voice now carried the weight of an impending confrontation. "Suspect is heading toward the central station. Be on the lookout. We can't let him slip away." My thoughts raced. What would I find when I finally caught up with them? Was I overreacting, or had I truly just intercepted something sinister before it could happen? The quiet, anxious anticipation of the next few minutes gnawed at me. I was no longer simply following my instincts. I had to act. The girl's innocence, her smile, her trusting nature, it haunted me. If there was even the slightest chance that I could prevent something from happening to her, I had to make sure I did everything possible. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and I stepped inside, alone. As I descended toward the central station, the noise of the mall grew fainter, replaced by the faint sound of the rumbling underground trains. The station would be bustling with commuters, tourists, and the typical chaos of people rushing to and from their destinations. It would be harder to spot them in the crowd. I had to act fast. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into the station, scanning the area carefully. The bright fluorescent lights above gave the whole space an almost sterile feel. Commuters hurried through the walkways, heads down, focused on their tasks. I moved quickly, adjusting my stance to ensure I didn't look too conspicuous. It wasn't long before I spotted him. Malcolm, the man from the restroom, now at a kiosk near one of the ticket machines. He was tapping something on the screen, though his hands appeared to tremble ever so slightly as he inserted money into the machine. The little girl, still standing beside him, seemed oblivious to the growing tension in the air. She was looking around curiously, taking in her new surroundings. I could see Malcolm's eyes darting nervously as he kept glancing over his shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone was following. His body language had changed entirely from the moment I'd seen him earlier. He was agitated now. More than just the discomfort he'd shown before. His posture was tense, his movements quick and purposeful. I moved closer, but not too quickly, not wanting to alert him. My heart was pounding. The closer I got, the more I could see that he knew something was wrong. As I got to within 30 feet of them, I felt a cold rush of realization. This was it. This was the moment I had feared. And everything had led to this confrontation. I took another step forward, preparing to make my move. Just as I was about to close the distance between us, Anna turned, her face lighting up in recognition. "Officer," she called out, her voice ringing through the station. "Hello again." The smile that had been on her face earlier returned, her innocence still unshaken by the chaotic events unfolding. But when Malcolm heard her, his head snapped up, his gaze locking with mine. In that instant, I saw the fear, the recognition, and something else in his eyes. He knew I was onto him. He didn't even hesitate, he bolted. His body lurched forward, pushing through the crowd with alarming speed. "Dad," Anna called out, confused as she watched him rush away, leaving her behind. My instincts kicked in. "Stay there, sweetie," I called out, my voice firm. "I'll be right back." Without waiting for a response, I pushed through the crowd. My eyes locked on Malcolm as he dashed toward platform 3. I shouted over my radio as I sprinted. "Suspect on the run. He's heading for platform 3. All units, converge. The child is safe but alone near the kiosks." My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as I navigated through the crowded station. Malcolm was fast, but I was determined. The gap between us closed quickly. I wasn't about to let him get away, not now. Not when I had the chance to stop whatever he had planned. Suddenly, he turned a corner, his eyes scanning the exits, looking for a way out. But there was no escape. I reached him in a burst of speed and tackled him to the ground. The force of the impact knocked the wind out of both of us. But I quickly regained my footing. He struggled beneath me, but I was in control now. "Malcolm Reed," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through me. "You're under arrest for child-related crimes and attempted kidnapping." The realization hit him like a wave, and his defiance crumbled. His body went limp as I pulled his arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs into place. The weight of the situation sank in fully now. This man had preyed on a child. And today, he wouldn't get away with it. The crowd that had gathered watched in silence as I stood, pulling Malcolm to his feet. I could see the confusion and fear in Anna's eyes. But I had no time to reassure her yet. We had stopped the danger. But there was still a lot to do. As I led Malcolm back toward the station's exit, I felt a rush of mixed emotions. Relief flooded through me, but the anger was still there too. What kind of person could do this to a child? And even as the immediate danger had passed, I knew this was just the beginning. There was still a child to protect, an investigation to carry out, and a whole web of questions that needed answers. But for now, I had to focus on the task at hand. Malcolm was in custody, and that was all that mattered. The security office was bustling as I returned with Malcolm Reed in tow. The tension in the air was palpable. But for now, the immediate danger had passed. The man who had nearly abducted a child was in custody. And I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I couldn't stop replaying the moments when I'd first laid eyes on him and Anna. The gnawing unease, the instinct that something was off, had been right. But now, as I walked through the office, my mind was already turning to the next steps. I knew we had to ensure Anna's safety, and I needed to find her as soon as possible. She was the key. She had been the reason I'd acted, the reason I'd followed my gut. Even when everything seemed so normal on the surface, my eyes darted around the office, hoping to spot her, and then I saw her, sitting in a quiet corner with Jessica, one of the other officers. The little girl was visibly shaken, her blue eyes wide, filled with uncertainty. Jessica was crouching down beside her, speaking softly, offering comfort. I could see that Anna had been through more than any child her age should ever have to endure. I walked over slowly, not wanting to startle her. I crouched down to her level, trying to offer a reassuring smile. "Hey there, Anna," I said gently. "Do you remember me? I'm Officer Mike. I was the one who saw you at the mall." She nodded, her lip trembling slightly. "You helped me," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. She seemed to draw comfort from my presence, though it was clear that the fear and confusion still lingered. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. The way she had been looking around, so lost and unsure, reminded me of what she had been through. "I'm so glad you're safe now, Anna," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I promise, no one is going to hurt you." Jessica, who had been watching us, stood up and walked over to join me. She didn't say anything at first, just glanced at me, And I could tell she was reading the situation in the same way I was. This girl needed more than just protection. She needed someone to be there for her. Someone who could offer not only safety but stability in the chaos of her life. I glanced at Anna, my mind whirling. Do you know where your parents are, sweetheart? I asked softly, though I already had an inkling. Anna hesitated, her small voice faltering. I don't have parents, she said quietly. I live at the orphanage. But I don't like it there. She wiped at her eyes, clearly holding back tears. It's too dark and scary. There are mice and bugs. I don't like it. My heart sank. No child should have to grow up like that. No child should feel that sense of abandonment. That sense of fear in a place that was supposed to be their safe haven. The orphanage she was describing. How could that be acceptable? I looked over at Jessica, who had a sympathetic expression on her face. There was no easy answer here. But there was something I knew for sure. Anna needed more than just a place to stay. She needed love, care, and stability, things that, from what I could tell, the orphanage simply wasn't providing. Anna, I began, my voice a little firmer now. I know things are tough right now. I know the orphanage doesn't feel like a good place. But we're going to help you. We're going to make sure you're safe. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. You will? She asked, as if she wasn't sure if she could believe me. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Yes, we'll figure something out, okay? We won't leave you alone. But even as I spoke the words, I knew they weren't enough. I knew that, deep down, this wasn't just about getting her out of that dangerous situation with Malcolm. It was about making sure she had a future that wasn't defined by fear and abandonment. Jessica stepped forward again, her face thoughtful. Mike, there's something we can do. I know people in child services. Maybe we can get her into a better place, somewhere safer. Somewhere with more support. I could hear the quiet but unmistakable determination in her voice. And it sparked something in me. I wasn't going to leave Anna in limbo. I wasn't going to let her slip through the cracks. I'm not going to let her go back to that place, I said firmly, my heart heavy with the weight of what needed to be done. I'll make sure she's taken care of, one way or another. I turned back to Anna, offering her a soft smile. You're not alone anymore. We're going to make sure you're okay. As I spoke the words, a profound sense of responsibility washed over me. I wasn't just dealing with a case anymore. This was a child who had been failed by the system, who had no one else to turn to. And for some reason, in that moment, I knew that it was my job to make sure she had a future. The weight of that realization was heavy, but it also gave me the clarity I needed. I wasn't just a cop anymore, I was her protector. And I would do whatever it took to ensure she was safe. As the days passed, the situation with Anna continued to unfold. I kept in close contact with child services, ensuring that everything was moving along smoothly. The more I learned about Anna's life at the orphanage, the more determined I became to help her find a better future. There were countless forms to fill out, endless phone calls to make, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that Anna, and the other children in that orphanage, deserved more than they had been given. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk, my phone buzzed with an update. Anna had been placed with a foster family, a warm couple who had been waiting for a child like her. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. She would no longer have to live in fear, no longer be left to wander through life alone. Her new family would give her the love and care that every child deserves. I felt a sense of peace settle over me. My instincts had been right all along. By trusting them, I had not only saved Anna from a dangerous situation, but I had also helped her start a new chapter in her life, a chapter filled with hope, love, and possibility. As I sat back in my chair, I couldn't help but think about all the other children out there who might not have anyone to protect them. I promised myself that I would keep fighting, keep doing whatever I could to make sure no child had to face the world alone. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life stories. We have many more inspiring tales to share.